Greetings and welcome to this episode of the Heal and Restore podcast with the hostess with the mostest, beautiful Cathy Boyd over here.
I've got the most today.
Yeah, well, you got the most all the time.
Oh,
so,
thank you.
And of course, little old me, Randy.
Little old you.
I shouldn't discount myself
No,
that
you
way,
shouldn't.
but
But it's often fun.
yeah,
It's all fun.
we practice on making each other number one all the time.
Yeah.
So,
I never won.
Yeah, I number one. How are you?
Good.
So we're gonna dive into something a little different today.
Yeah.
A lot of our clients come to us, and I will say every one of our clients, all of our clients on this
I would
one,
say we're at 100% on
100%
that
of our
one,
clients,
definitely.
the number one issue they have in their relationship and marriage is, drum roll, communication.
Yep.
And the fact is 98% of divorces, the number one reason is because of poor communication.
Yeah.
So it's a situation that needs to be addressed, and we help all of our clients through this part of the communication. Whether it's important, we want to practice it first in our homes, right? Whether we're married or in a loving relationship, committed relationship, and that will carry over to our children.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
We want to teach our children how to communicate. It will carry into our jobs. It will carry into our entire life if you practice the principles.
Yeah,
right?
all relationships.
Exactly.
That's
And that's like the one thing we tell everybody, or we ask everybody this. It's like, whoever taught you how to communicate in a proper, loving, kind way?
Yeah.
And not one of them can say nobody.
Yeah.
We're just doing what we learned, right?
Mhm.
What's the societal rules of communication?
And the family of origin that we grow
Yeah.
up in. I mean, not that that's all a bad thing.
No.
Every parent is doing the very best they can.
Absolutely.
And they're doing a little bit better, like we talked about,
Right.
a little bit better than the generation before them.
Right.
So, yeah, it's definitely something that is, I would say, the number one thing that couples struggle with.
Yeah.
Is for sure. And we have ourselves.
Yeah,
it's not anything that is, that we haven't been through ourselves. And I think that's one thing that is beneficial, is that because we are aware of it and we know what we've had to do to correct
Right.
our communication, we can pass that along to our clients as well.
Cathy and I have been working on this stuff for 20 years now,
Mm-hmm.
and we still, it's real easy to fall back into those old behaviors of communication.
Absolutely.
Although we catch ourselves a lot quicker than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the importance of when you get these skills, you start practicing them, you use them, every day. And when you trip, you correct yourself right away.
Yeah.
And it's okay. That's part of growth. It's like, oh man, you know what? I'm sorry. I came at you the wrong way. I didn't mean to talk to you that way.
Right. And
So on
we'll
and so
dive into some of those, but there's a lot of things that we're discovering through working with men and women in relationships, is things like expectations.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that you've discovered in writing some of your books and doing some of your research, but then now we're actually realizing it in the human beings that we're working with.
Yeah.
Is nobody ever talks about the
No.
expectations going into a relationship.
No, it's like we run across some a soulmate or somebody, and we start dating them, right?
Mhm.
And we either continue dating them or we don't. And when we start seeing a little bit serious, we now we're really dating them and we're talking. And what happens is that we're overwhelmed by the essence of puppy love, let's say, love, right? And all we're doing is looking at, oh man, this person's so good. We're looking at all the good in them, right? And then even if we have a red flag that kind of pops up, nah, it ain't that bad. It's just she's having a bad day, he's having a bad day.
Justify the behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And we ignore it, right? But how often do we sit down before we enter into it should be even before in a marriage, but into that
serious
deep, loving relationship. How often do we sit down with our partner and say, hey, let's talk about our expectations and needs.
Mm-hmm.
My expectations for myself, the needs that I need for myself, and then the expectations I'm going to have for you as my spouse, and the needs I have from you. Every one of the clients we've talked to, they've never done that.
No.
And so we go into,
didn't do it.
No, we didn't do it either. We
know.
didn't know. So we're going into these relationships with unexpressed expectations and needs. And we wonder why we can't communicate.
Right. Right. Yeah.
because
So
no crystal balls.
nope, nope. And if you have a crystal ball, there's typically a couple cracks in it, so it doesn't work well
It
anyways.
doesn't work well anyway.
Yeah.
So
So we want to jump into that though. We want
yeah,
to talk about some, we've got some key points and that we're going to be able to talk about. But first thing I think we want to dive into is why communication breaks down. What are some of the common pitfalls? What are
right.
the struggles that people struggle with? And I think the number one thing for me is misunderstanding and assumptions.
Yeah,
It's so easy to misunderstand or misinterpret another person's conversation, and then we get into this assumption. And boy, the assumption, I don't know if anybody remembers Jiminy Cricket from the movie way back. When you assume something, you make an ass out of you and
me,
me.
right?
So, that falls into that
And,
category.
and plus those assumptions can send us into a dark spiral, into a rabbit hole that we just can't see the light in,
Right. No,
right?
absolutely.
Because what if, and how we discovered, on those assumptions, there's a couple questions, right?
Right.
One is it true, right? What you're thinking,
Yeah.
is it true? And more than likely it's not, because our mind takes us in places it probably shouldn't go.
Right.
And if you want to argue with yourself, well, it's probably true, then is it absolutely true?
Yeah.
Right? And there's a third one. How do you react if you believe the thought that you're believing? What does it do to your body? What does it do to you physically and emotionally?
Right, right. No, that's good. And that leads into the second part of why
Right.
communication breaks down is emotional reactivity and defensiveness. I think a lot of us have learned how that, we protect ourselves emotionally by reacting,
Yes.
and then we have to become defensive. We have to protect ourselves
Right.
even further. So it's those buildup of walls to protect ourselves, because emotionally it feels uncomfortable. We don't like the way it makes us feel.
Right, exactly.
So we have to protect ourselves in that.
And part of this is that, and Kathy and I, we really believe this wholeheartedly, is that how many of you have lost your voice as a kid growing up,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we talk about it all the time. And like, when I say you lost your voice, I don't mean that you lost your voice,
Like you got
physically. Yeah,
laryngitis, no.
laryngitis. I mean, your voice was taken from you. What does that look like, Randy? It looks like every time I talk about my feelings are discounted. Nothing I say matters. I'm not that important. Nobody cares anyways. So, or when we used our voice to express our feelings, right, the best way we knew how, it created some kind of physical or emotional retribution
Mhm.
that just put us in a rabbit hole,
So it's no
right?
wonder we become defensive.
It's defensive, and no
Yeah.
wonder we can't speak our truth,
Yeah.
because all I know is when I speak my truth, I'm going to get lambasted
Right,
for it.
right.
Right?
Yeah. And then another common pitfall is in breakdown of communication is avoidance. Oof.
So, yeah.
Stonewalling or shutting down.
Yeah.
That's me. I was able to avoid conversations if it was uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
And I would shut down.
You're a runner.
I'm a runner. I can be a runner still, but if the conversation is uncomfortable or I feel threatened in any way, I'll just shut down.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that. And that just comes back to not realizing or not knowing how to use my voice in a constructive way, and or having my voice shut down.
Exactly. So what happens in that voice being shut down is that we might be talking in a conversation and our defenses are already up if I'm talking to Kathy, because I've never been able to use my voice, right? And so I'm talking to her in a way, and if I don't feel she's hearing me, right? If I don't get a response that I'm expecting or need, then I'm going to raise the decibel next time a little louder. Right? I'm going to keep raising the decibel at the level I speak, because when I hit my 10 decibel, if she don't hear me now, then something's wrong.
That's what I'm running.
That's what she's running.
I'm shutting down, avoiding,
exactly,
stonewalling, all of those things.
So if they don't hear you on a normal voice, that's where the communication breakdown started, and it's neither one of your fault.
Right.
You were never taught how to communicate properly. And when we start raising our voice, like Kathy says, she starts running, and all I'm doing is pushing her away.
Further away from me. Yeah. And then the last pitfall that we see in communication breakdown is the lack of clarity, or like you had mentioned early on, the unspoken expectations.
Right.
If we're not clear, and if we're not clear on what somebody is talking about, that's going to break down communication right away. And
100%.
this is something that I've really had to work on, especially since retiring and just putting full time into what we do with our
Hmm.
coaching clients. With you being home with you all the time, we speak differently.
Yeah.
Our mind processes differently. How we get from point A to point B is completely different, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But for me, what I've had to learn to do is ask questions, ask curious questions, get clarity on it. Otherwise, I won't know what you're talking
All right.
about. But in the past, I shouldn't say not in the more recent past, that was a big struggle when we first
And
moved here, when we first started with me being retired. It
right.
took me a while to realize that I don't think the same way he does. He doesn't think the same way I
Right.
does, and his communication is not the same.
And if you're hoping that you're in a relationship or married to somebody that will think the same way you do,
Yeah.
you're in for a world of long trouble and a lot of hurt in your life. Because the one thing you don't want to be married to is somebody exactly like you.
Yeah. No, we talk about that quite often with our clients and
Our
such.
therapist told us that thank God the two of you aren't alike because you'd be killing each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So there's some impact though to this poor
Yes,
communication
a
that we
lot,
want to kind of
yes.
touch on is in we've experienced this. It sometimes will affect our intimacy. It can affect our trust, and it can affect the connection in the relationship. So there's times where if we're not communicating well and it's creating angst in me, I don't want to be around you.
Right.
And you don't want to be around me. I
No.
mean, it goes both ways. And so poor communication can really impact the closeness of a relationship.
Yes.
Yeah. So
people, a lot with the intimacy, right, affects intimacy. Physical, sexual intimacy doesn't start the minute you get in the bedroom at
No.
nighttime. It starts from the moment you wake up in the morning.
Right.
Right. You can't be mean to your wife or husband in the morning, right? And then all day long, you guys go to work, you come home, you're nice to your husband, right? And then you expect and there's still some friction going on, but you expect them to make love to you. It's not going to happen that way, especially when women, our wives and our female partners or spouses, they need the emotional intimacy in order to have a good sexual intimacy.
Yeah, no, actually.
It'll change
So
your
good.
dynamic a thousandfold.
Yeah, emotions affect every part of us.
Exactly.
So then we're going to get into another category here of the building blocks of an effective communication. So there are steps and tools that we're going to give you here that will help build effective communication for you and your spouse, you and your kids, your partner, your coworkers. And one of the biggest things,
go ahead.
One of the biggest things, and I know you're going to dive right into this, is the active listening.
Right.
People think communication is just talking.
That's not it.
It's part of it.
Part of it,
but the biggest part of it is active
most
listening.
important part is active listening.
Yeah.
Right. Because here's what we do. Many people. I like to say all, but my wife won't let me say that, so I'll say many people. Right. Is we start listening to somebody talk and they get maybe one or two sentences into the conversation, and then our mind is going 1,000 miles an hour how you can fix them. So after the first respond, right? So after the first or second sentence, all you're hearing is wah 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 wah. You've lost
because you're articulating
in your touch.
Yeah, you're articulating in your own mind how you're going to respond to the conversation.
Or the people that might have ADHD. This is where it's really critical. You got to make sure that you're in a room where there's no distractions.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and what Cathy was saying is that there's a difference in when we're listening. And what people do, I just stated it, the first thing they listen for is they listen to respond.
Absolutely.
And that's not, first of all, one thing that Cathy and I've learned is that when we're going to enter into a conversation, it could be, Kath, I need to talk to you about something. And this is just about how I'm feeling. It's all about me, right? So that takes the weight off of you.
Right.
Right? Takes the weight off of Cathy.
I don't feel like I have to be defensive.
Right. And when you first start doing this, you will be defensive.
Yeah, you feel a little uncomfortable.
Right. But what we're doing is we're listening to respond versus listening to understand.
Did you say that backwards?
We're not.
We're listening to.
I'm sorry. I said it. She said I said that. I'm sorry.
We're listening to understand versus listening to respond. Because that's what you want to do.
Yeah, you want to listen to, I said the same thing, but it's back.
You
How
did it
come I change? It's
backwards.
backwards in my head right now. So what we normally do is this, okay? See, we're not perfect. All right. What we normally do is we listen to respond.
Right.
But what we want to
Want to
be
do.
doing is listening to understand what the other person
Yeah.
is saying.
Absolutely.
Um, there's a lot to this.
Right.
When you sit down with your partner or spouse to talk with them, you want to make sure that there's no computer, you got the phone put away, the
Mm-hmm.
TV's not on, there's really no
Yeah.
distractions. Away from the kids if you have kids. And you're gonna sit down and you're gonna sit there and listen with an open mind,
Mm-hmm.
very curious mind as to what they're saying,
Right.
right? Because that way you can respond with, if they want a response, with curious questions.
Yeah.
Instead of telling them what you think they should do or how they should do it, if you listen with curiosity, you will be able to develop curious questions in your mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some of the tips for just practicing that active listening, in addition to what you just shared, is, paraphrasing, kind of like
Yeah,
mirroring, I
mirroring,
guess.
yes,
Well,
yeah,
this is what I heard you say. And then
yes,
you kind of repeat back. It doesn't have to be every single word,
no,
but repeat back what you understood and make sure that that's what you heard.
right,
Eye contact's really important. I keep looking at you. I'm looking eye contact. Nodding your head, acknowledging that you're actually actively listening to what they're saying. It's so, so important.
it's really important. And with the mirroring, right, some people go, that's not exactly what I said. No. So maybe a better way to say it, and this just came to mind, is so what I heard and what I'm understanding you to say,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we want to make sure we understand, not just heard, but we understood what they said.
Our interpretation.
Our interpretation, our understanding. I understand you to be saying that when I don't give you the attention in the evening that you need from me, you feel like you're being neglected. You feel
Yeah.
like everything's more important.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And that might not be those words,
no, but
but
this is what I'm interpreting
right.
in the conversation.
And
And it's interesting because the example you just gave is kind of falls under the next one, is speaking with clarity and
yes,
kindness.
yes,
So, this is the power. We talk about the I statements all the time versus the you statements. And so we always have to remember that when we're communicating with somebody, it's about, like, if I'm communicating with you, it's about me. So
right,
I'm going to say, I feel, or when this happens, I feel like I'm being neglected.
right.
So it's really, really important to make it about you, because it's your conversation.
Right.
Don't push and point the finger on somebody else, because that's just going to create more conflict.
So if I come to you and say, Cathy, when you do this, or when you talk to me this way, you're making me pissed off like this.
My walls are up. I just added like 4 more layers of
Right.
defensiveness.
So what
Yeah.
what I'm doing is I'm making an accusation of something that Cathy did.
Right.
Right.
And I'm going to become very defensive.
And the walls are going to go flying up. She's going to be, the defenses are going to go up. So when you start saying you, because you,
and that falls
it's not
under
good.
and that falls under avoiding the blame and the criticism.
Exactly.
So it all kind of ties together. That's where clarity and kindness using I statements is so valuable in that communication.
Because especially early on, because a lot of times your partner or spouse might not even know that they're doing this, right? It's just so natural to them. And especially if you've been in this kind of a relationship for a long time, and now you're starting the healing process.
If this is a practice you've been doing most of your life, it's going to be a little challenging to break. Not impossible.
No,
it's just going to take a lot of consistency to change it.
Right. And this is where having good coaches like Cathy and I really come into play.
Definitely can help you on that. And the other one that people don't really talk about, I don't think people really acknowledge, is the nonverbal communication.
Yeah, and I think that's something we talk about with our clients. You go, well, I'm using my voice. I'm speaking my truth with love, right? I said, okay, that's okay. And usually the partner will say, or the spouse will say, yes, she is. But the way they are saying it, their tone of voice, right?
Their body language tells a lot too.
Their facial expression. So that's the other component to it. So remember, it's a learning curve, because we're asking you to set a boundary, right? We're asking you to take a risk, and that's the only way you're going to grow. You got to take that risk.
Right.
So you're doing something that you're very uncomfortable doing, right? You're not used to doing it, and so you're gonna probably come out a little bit harsh when you first start,
because it's new. That's all it is. It's
Yeah,
just a new
absolutely.
behavior.
So we want to focus on the part that, hey, they're using their voice, and yeah, their energy might be a little tense, whatever. That's what we need to recognize that, so that we can start working on that part of it.
You learn to soften it
Right.
after time. And then the other one, of course, timing matters. When you're going to talk with somebody, make sure you're choosing the right moment. Especially if you're going to have difficult conversations, make
Yeah.
sure you're like what you mentioned earlier, there's no distractions,
Right.
your phones are put away, the kids are in another room playing happily. You're not in a work environment or in a social environment. If you're going to have a difficult conversation, make sure you get the right timing.
It's in a safe space.
Yeah.
And look, here's the time not to talk to your spouse about something difficult. The minute they walk in the door from a long day at work.
Right.
Do not approach them with, we need to do this, got to do that, the kids this. We understand that. But when we walk in the door, the one thing that Kathy and I worked
We
on,
practiced it.
we
Yeah.
practiced it and it worked very well, is let your spouse come in the door, greet them with a, hey, hello, I'm glad you're home. I love you, kid. However you want to do that. Let them have 30 minutes to chill. Let them have 30 minutes to get kind of undressed, do whatever they want to do to get calm,
Decompress from the
to
day,
decompress from
basically.
the
Yeah.
day. And then you can sit down and start having a conversation. How was your day? And
Hmm.
so on and so forth. And then even, I would even say later on, maybe after dinner, during dinner, you can talk about your day
Hmm.
together, right? And if there's things that need to be done around the house, right?
Yeah.
Put a list together. Like if you're a stay-at-home mom, for
Hmm.
instance, I'm going to say that. If you're a stay-at-home mom, there's things that need to be done around the house. Put a list together that things that you feel need to be done in the house,
Hmm.
right? And then talk to your spouse about it. Say, here's a list of things
Put a
that,
plan.
put a plan
Yeah.
together, right?
Yeah.
But and then don't expect it to happen at the snap of your
Right.
fingers.
You said something about, maybe at the dinner table, and I'm just going to add this. If you're a family with children and you are able to all sit down
Yeah,
at dinner, that's a perfect opportunity to teach your kids healthy
out
communication.
100%.
Not only checking in with your spouse, but check in with the kids. And a lot of people may be doing this, but really ask curious questions of your kids, get them thinking, and let them see how good healthy
Oh,
communication, what order do you have communicate, not just how was your day? Okay, that was it. Ask questions. Well,
hey,
what made your day good? What made your class fun? What made this particular subject hard for you today? Whatever that might be, bring your kids into healthy communication.
it's called critical thinking,
Hmm.
right? And if they've had a bad day, ask them why it was bad.
Yeah.
Don't tell them what they could have done different. Ask them,
Yeah.
what could you have done different that maybe it wouldn't have been so?
Let them solve it.
Yeah, you can hint them along, right?
Hmm.
But challenge them.
Yeah.
Let them learn to critically think.
Yeah. No, that's good. So then our next little category is we're going to offer you some tools and some strategies that are going to help create better communication for you,
Right.
yourself, your family, your spouse, whatever that is. And this first one is called the 60-second rule, 60-second rule. And this is where you pause before responding to emotional situations. Now, that can be challenging because
Yeah.
60 seconds seems like a really long time. What
Yeah.
I would recommend, especially if this is something you're just starting out, is if you need that pause, let your spouse, let your partner, whoever it is you're communicating with, give me a few minutes, give me a second here, give me a few seconds, give me 60 seconds to let me put my thoughts together on this. There is nothing wrong with
Nope.
that, but the biggest thing is to make sure you're using your voice and letting your partner know so that they don't think you're just shutting down in that moment.
Right. You don't want to react, you want to respond. And
Hmm.
when we talk with our couples about this, and a lot of times that one of them will practice it and the other person gets all defensive about it. And I go,
Hmm.
wait a minute, we've talked about this in our last session that
Yeah.
if you need to take that pause, take the pause. It's okay. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't want to react. Reacting is what gets us in trouble.
Right. That's where the
Right.
communication breaks down and nothing ever gets
And
resolved.
so the first part of the communication is, hey, that's a good question and a good thought. Give me a couple. I need about a minute to think about that.
Yeah, give me a
Just let
minute.
me gather my thoughts on
A
that.
minute is 60 seconds. It
Okay.
sounds a lot easier to get to.
Right.
And then the other thing we've kind of talked about a little bit, but is just that daily check-in method and, setting aside a time
Yeah.
each day that you can have open communication. Maybe it's right before bed and you want to do a check-in. Sometimes it could be first thing in the morning. We've done that. We work on a calendaring system with our schedule, and it's always like, what do we got going today? What are your plans? You know, that type of thing. So it just brings us together for us. It brings us
Mhm.
together at the beginning of the day, but we also do it in the evening where we just do a little check-in for the following day as
Right.
well. And it
Or
is,
just to check in on how you're doing. I mean, it's good to, especially like if one of the spouse, one or both of you are kind of struggling with some things, right?
mhm,
I mean, it's just kind of a check and say, hey, how you feeling today?
right.
I'm a little, I'm a little down, whatever. Well, is there anything I can do for you?
Yeah.
Don't try to give them advice. Just ask
Or
them
fix it.
or fix it.
Yeah.
Just say, well, what can is there anything I can do for you to help you
Yeah.
through this? And they say no, then it's no. They say, you know what, I just need some time to chill.
Okay.
And give them the time to chill,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Honor their request.
Yeah,
Or they're gonna shut down again if you don't honor what they're
right.
requesting.
Yeah, and one of the other challenges in, better communication is always conflict resolution. And so we've got some basic steps for conflict resolution in relationships that we're going to go over. And some of this might sound like you've heard it before, and you may have, but we want to make sure because conflict is where communication really struggles.
The conflict resolution, this might come up, I mean, these steps might have to take place where, you know what? It's time for us, we need to take a break. We
Hmm.
need to walk away from this conversation right now because neither one of us, not going anywhere good. Both of us are getting upset.
Hmm.
So let's just walk away from this for a while. Let us cool down and we're gonna come
Come back
back
to it.
to it, right?
Yeah. So we've got four areas that will help in conflict resolution. And well, there's three basic steps, I should say. One of them is calmly communicate your feelings
Yes,
and needs
calmly,
calmly. And that's why if you have to step away for a
right.
little bit, but come back to it. And this is where we use the I
The I
statements to
statements.
express how you're feeling without blaming the
Right.
other person.
So here's something that's really important that y'all understand. Your feelings are your feelings.
Hmm.
Nobody has the right to tell you what you should feel or shouldn't feel or how
Right.
you should feel. That's none of their business. Those are your feelings. Feelings aren't bad. It's
Yeah.
what if you act on them in a toxic way, that's when they're bad. But your feelings are your feelings. That's okay. You need to express them. It doesn't mean anything bad's going to
No.
happen. I mean,
No, they belong to you,
they
so own
belong to
them.
you, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
so, when we're using our I statements, you gave an example a little earlier, but it could be something as simple as, I feel hurt when I don't feel heard in our
Yes.
conversations.
Yeah, it's perfect right there.
And it's like, "Oh, okay, well, tell me how that's coming about. What am I doing
All right.
that is making you feel that
Well,
way?
what can I do
And what can
differently?
I do differently?" Yeah, you understand what you're doing wrong, but also ask how
Right.
you can do it differently.
Exactly.
And then we've talked about this too, the listen with the intent to understand. We want to give our partner space to share their perspective without interrupting. Hello, Miss Interrupter over here. I am way better than I was, but that is an area that I always felt that I was not really proud of.
Uh,
But, again, we can repeat back what they're saying to confirm that we're understanding them and showing empathy.
yes.
So these helped in conflict resolution.
So when you're talking about the interruption, here's something that you can do, and it's okay to do this, right?
Mhm.
Like Kathy, she get these thoughts, and she was afraid she was going to
Yeah,
forget them.
that's
So
exactly it.
we have piece of a note paper and a pen right there with you, right? And if you guys are in a conversation, you don't want to interrupt your partner in his thoughts. Just jot a little tiny bullet point,
A note
just
of some
a
sort.
little note that reminds you, I want to talk about this.
Mhm.
And what will happen is you might write that little bullet point, and the question is going to get answered in the
In the
conversation.
conversation. Yeah, absolutely. And then the third part of this is making sure that we find a solution together. Remember, we're not enemies. We're friends, we're
Yeah,
best friends. If you're married, this is your person.
right.
So we want to make sure that we're working as a team to create compromise and or agree on a path on how to move forward. Because sometimes I think conflict feels like we're just in constant battle, but we don't want to be in a battle with our best friend.
No,
So
no.
be open to finding that solution together and focus on the solution rather than proving who's right.
Yeah,
That's a lot of times we have been in that place where we were right fighters. We wanted to be right.
you want to be right or you want to be happy.
Yeah, we were
You know,
right fighters for a long time. And then, of course, building a safe communication space. We've talked about that as creating an environment where both people feel safe, where they can speak their truth, they can feel validated and respected. I mean, this is not conflict resolution isn't to be done in the middle of a restaurant with a football game going
No,
on.
no. Mm-mm.
So you want to create that space. Um, and then, we conflict resolution is just a challenge, but if you can practice these basic principles and start practicing these principles, you're going to find that your conflicts will lessen and you'll be able to get to the result much quicker.
And I think as you develop these healthy communication skills along the way, those conflicts are going to become less and less and
Yeah,
less also.
absolutely.
Right? You're
Absolutely.
still going to have them because we're human beings and we're gonna trip all the time. Right?
Yeah.
It's just part of life. So it's a matter of catching ourselves when we've fallen and pick ourselves up and say, okay, well, like I ain't gonna do that again.
Right. No,
You know?
no, it's not fun to be in that same
Right.
cycle. So a lot of times our past creates communication
Yes.
barriers, and we've got to learn to overcome these communication barriers. So past traumas, how you were brought up in your family of origin, personality differences, all of these affect our communication
Right.
style. So we have to be able to recognize and be able to adjust to the different communication preferences, which is what we have worked on a lot over the last
Right.
several years, is recognizing them, because a lot of your trauma
It-
affected how you communicated,
yeah.
because you needed to feel validated, you needed to be
Right.
heard. And so understanding that from my perspective gave me an opportunity to learn how to listen and learn how to understand your communication, what is important to you, and how I can help you at the same time you're helping me
Right.
as well.
Right.
So, the importance is self-awareness. We
Yeah.
can't grow, in our
Right.
communication skills if we're not aware of how we're showing up.
And so that your past trauma in your life, and I'm gonna just real quick touch on this. A lot of people say, "Well, that was the past. I'm fine. It did not
Hmm.
affect me." Well, uh, some people maybe that's true.
Yeah.
Majority of people, trauma victims, they don't understand how much their trauma affects their life.
Well, they've been living in
They've been
it
living in
and
it,
it's
right?
normal to them.
It's normal to them. And what happens is it's inevitable that in relationships, it'll bring out the worst behavior of our trauma as a result of our trauma. It'll start manifesting itself at some point in time.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we don't, and this is something we notice in our clients as well,
Yes.
and it happened even with us, is everything starts off great.
Yeah.
And after a period of time, if you're in a long-term relationship, some of those past traumas, they start manifesting within the individual, which now affects the entire relationship.
And like for me and for a lot of the clients that we've talked to,
Hmm.
is the way that we were spoken to. It
Hmm.
was, not having a voice. It was being told we were stupid, we'll never amount to nothing. I mean, that was either verbal or nonverbal.
Hmm.
So, you might look at your partner and you go, what's wrong with him? He's very successful. Look at everything we've done together.
Right.
How come he beats us up? So what's wrong with this guy?
Right. Right.
But
Why do I feel like I'm getting the brunt of
right,
his
right.
behaviors?
And
Yes.
it creates a lot of sexual intimacy issues as
Yeah,
well, right?
absolutely. And then
Which
you have,
can be all this can be worked through.
yeah, and then sometimes too, just being mindful, if you have children in your home, the children are affected because now they are not wanting to use their voice. There's
Right,
fear that's brought into
exactly,
that.
right.
So it all manifests in some fashion, but it doesn't have to continue that way. And that's what we're here for too, as well. So as we kind of close this out, I'm just going to kind of touch on those on a few of these things that we talked about, is the takeaways. And so we talked about, first one was why communication breakdowns, what are the common pitfalls? We've covered that. We've talked about the building blocks of an effective communication, what active listening looks like and how we can do that. We talked about tools and strategies for better communication. And then we've also talked about the basic steps for conflict resolution, which is key to that. So just knowing that communication is something that when we're wanting to do something new, when we're wanting to change our behaviors in communication, it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. You've got to implement the practices.
It's like everything in recovery, right? How long have you been living with these toxic behaviors, these
Hmm.
toxic patterns,
Yeah.
these toxic communication styles that that they weren't working? I mean, they're pretty much ingrained in the fiber of your being. Some of it could be, if you're an adult, it could be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years you're
Yeah.
trying to undo.
Yeah.
So it's not going to go away overnight. It's
Nope.
going to take time because what we're doing is reprogramming a part, reprogramming our neural pathways.
Yeah.
Right? So we're putting in new things into practice, right? And the old things will want to sneak in once in a while, and you'll learn how to catch them.
You'll recognize them.
You'll recognize them along the way.
Definitely. So with what you said, you know, the fact that this is going to take practice, we're going to give our listeners a challenge in this podcast. So what we're going to challenge you with is there's going to be two things. We're going to have a challenge and we're going to have a call to action. So the first is the challenge. So we want to challenge you to try implementing one of these new communication techniques this week. Just pick one and work on it every day with somebody new. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kids, a coworker. Just take one of them and work on it this week. Let's see what the changes look like.
Right.
And then the call to action is we want to encourage you, our listeners, to share your thoughts, your experiences, or if you have any questions, leave a comment on any one of the listening platforms, or you can reach out to us at our website at www.healandrestorecounseling.com, or you can even email us. Email us at healandrestorecounseling@gmail.com. But if you're going to implement one of these practices for 7 days, shoot us an email. Let us know how it worked.
Right.
Let us know what your thoughts are on it. Let us know if you had a struggle on it. We'd like to know that as well, because we can take your information and we can help broaden and help others with it as well.
And of course, if they want some one-on-one coaching, personal help with it, you can reach out to us at Heal and Restore Counseling, and we will be glad to do our no-cost 1-hour discovery session with you. We do that because we want to make sure, we want to hear a little bit about you, you get to hear about us, and we want to make sure that we're a right fit, because this journey is going to be difficult, right? And we just want to make sure that we can comfortably walk with you through this journey, right? That you know, it's a tough journey. Right. I'll be honest with you, it is. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy.
No, it's not easy. There's work that has to be done. You know, anything that's worth change is going to require work.
Right.
And I'll just add to this, we've got a couple more weeks left in this first quarter, and we are still offering our 20% discount for our 12-week coaching service. So you get 100% of our services for a 20% discount. And it is 12 weeks, and we can share more of that in that discovery session. So if you're interested, go to our website at healandrestorecounseling.com. Send us a message through there, and we will get back in touch with you to set up your no-cost 1-hour, no-cost, freebie-deebie discovery session.
You know, we usually we get back to you within, unless it's late at night or in the evening, we'll get back to you next
24 hours.
But we get back to you within a 24-hour period, if not sooner. If it's during the day, we get back to you within a couple hours.
24 hours. 24 hours. No more than 24 hours. That's good. And then you want to share about your books?
Yes.
Our books, your books?
Yeah, we got our books. We got how Healing the Wounded Child Within, which is also available via Audible. We've got 30-Day Devotional Wholeness, 7-Day Challenge Workbook. We've got the How to Heal and Restore Your Marriage. It's that's being done on Audible right now.
Yeah, we're working on that right now.
That one's published. We got Renewing Bonds. That one's published. We got another one coming out probably in a couple months.
Yeah, all of the books can currently be found on Amazon.
Right.
And if you are interested in a PDF copy of our current book, Renewing Bonds, you can email us, and we'll be more than happy to send you a PDF copy of that at no charge to you.
Exactly. So. And they're all available either by paperback or on Kindle. With the when Healing the Wounded Child Within is Audible, and then How to Heal and Restore Your Marriage will be on Audible.
Yeah, Amazon will. You can pick and choose through Amazon. You can see what's available and what fits your needs. So that's perfect.
Right.
Awesome.
And then you got some other house cleaning, right? I mean, we got.
So yeah, we are really pushing ourselves through the social media platforms. So we are on YouTube. You'll find us on YouTube. TikTok is our newest one. We would love for you to share Instagram as well, Facebook, all of the social media platforms. And if you see something that you like, pass it on, share it with 5 people.
Even if you don't like it.
Even if you don't like it, pass it on. It may help somebody. And then if you're listening to this podcast or any of our podcasts that are available through, mainly we push them out through Spotify, but they hit several platforms. Be sure to pass it along and share it with 5 people. That's your call to action. Exactly. Share our podcast with at least 5 people each week. We would appreciate that.
And 3 simple things we want you to do. It'll take you 2 seconds. Push the follow button, like button, follow button, subscribe button, and the share button.
Yep, absolutely.
Do those 3 things for us. Won't cost you nothing, and we'd really appreciate it.
Spreading Spreading the good news is what we're asking.
Righto, righto. Oh,
All
that
right.
it?
That's most everything. That was a
All
lot.
right. I made it through without not feeling too good today.
Yeah, I know you're not feeling good, but you did it,
I
honey.
did it. I
Yeah,
did it.
proud of you.
All right. So remember this, everybody. If nobody tells you they love you today, Randy does,
Kathy does.
but more importantly, God does. And He bless everybody. Have an absolutely fabulous week.
Be blessed.